Hello RAC School leaders, thanks for tuning in to this tutorial video. This tutorial will cover the prior year interventions tab. So on our instructions page, we're on step 7. We've already covered steps 1 through 6 in other videos. So back to our tab. This tab is asking you to reflect on prior year interventions in a couple different key areas. So let's go over the first area. The first area is student academic performance on state assessments. So it's asking you to provide the number of students at each grade level in the school who are partially proficient on state assessments for language arts and math in last year's results, 2011 to 12. So if you're a K-6 school or K-5 school, these are your tested areas. These are your tested grades, 3, 4, and 5. And this is your number of partially proficient students and the number of students in that grade, 54. And again, 31 out of 50 and 34 out of 54. I should take a moment here and say that these numbers are made up. I know we're using a specific school here in our example, but these numbers are not accurate. I just made these up for the sake of the presentation. So, what were the services provided? Well, for our third graders, we had reading recovery program, we had tutoring services provided, and we had RTI. For our fourth grade, we had tutoring services and RTI, and for our fifth grade, the same as for fourth grade. And so then this column asks you to describe the strengths and challenges of providing these services. Using the best available data, describe how the services might impact outcomes in this current year. So this is just a chance for you to reflect on what were the services provided to address your partially proficient kids, and how do you think it's going to turn out? So our reading recovery program works very well, but we're limited by reading recovery protocols and how many students can benefit. Our strength in tutoring is that we're able to identify kids ahead of time and put them in a supportive environment, but we can't effectively measure academic learning time in tutoring and track results. RTI process is new and growing, and we aim to get more staff trained, etc. Again, these are hypothetical. Tutoring services provided, our strength in tutoring is that we're able to identify struggling students, but we can't measure academic learning time, same as above. All right, so this area, this page here, this page 1 of 3, asking you to reflect on what you did, services provided for your partially proficient kids, and how you think that result turned out. This is for language arts, and if you scroll down, you're doing the same thing here for math. Moving to the right to page 2. These are the prior year interventions for teaching and learning strategies and programs. So what were your strategies to increase student achievement in this current year in terms of teaching and learning? So here you have some things that are pre-templated for you. Key content or focus group areas: English language arts, math, students with disabilities, homeless or migrant, and ELL. So for ELA, we did classroom instruction that works, professional development and implementation. Was it effective? Yes. What's the documentation of effectiveness? Data based on administrative observations. And what's the measurable outcome? Well, we saw a 10% increase towards demonstration of higher order thinking and a 15% increase in providing meaningful feedback to students. So that's the level of specificity you're looking for here. With measurable outcomes, try to be as specific as your data will let you be. If you say that yes, classroom instruction that works was effective, what's your documentation and what are those measurable outcomes? So if you say your documentation is that we had observations, your measurable outcome needs to be some sort of coherent, cohesive, specific number. We saw a 10% increase in demonstration of higher order thinking, or 15% increase in meaningful feedback to students. Something along those lines, something where you can really chart noticeable specific growth. And then the same thing in math. And your numbers might be different for math classes in your measurable outcomes. But that's the level of specificity we're looking for here. For our students with disabilities, we added extra time. Ask scores or documentation of effectiveness or lack of effectiveness. In this case, was it effective? Yes or no? No. And the measurable outcome of its ineffectiveness is that performance remained flat. So what did you do? Who did it target? Was it effective? What's the documentation of that effectiveness? And then be specific about how effective it was. Scrolling down, describe the extended day or extended year programs implemented to address academic difficulties or deficiencies. So for ELA, math, students with disabilities, homeless, migrant, and ELLs, this is what we did. We had 21st century program and after-school tutoring. Was it effective? Yes. What's your documentation? Benchmark scores and ask scores. And there's the level of specificity we're looking for. Of students enrolled in 21st Century Tutoring, 55% scored proficient or above. In math, 48% scored proficient or above. For our ELL students, addition of morning chat, ELL sessions, whatever those might look like. Were they effective? Yes. How do we know? Well, we know through student feedback. We gave them a survey. And we also know through performance on classroom tests. So our ELL students did plus 19% overall on performance in their classes compared to the previous year. And our student survey results were 90% positive. So this just shows you that, a measurable outcome doesn't have to necessarily be linked to an ask score or something specific like that, a standardized test. It can be a measure of student feedback, performance on classroom tests, etc. There's a lot of different ways to measure effectiveness. And then moving on to page 3. Page 3 asks you to reflect first on professional development that was implemented in these key areas. And then it's the same pattern. PD on classroom instruction that works. Was it effective? Yes. How do we know? Examination of walkthrough data throughout the year. And what were the measurable outcomes? 10% in higher order thinking increased and 15% in providing meaningful feedback. Same thing for math. And then we had inclusion PLC teams for our students with disabilities. These are inclusion teachers. Was it effective? No. How do we know? Teacher survey. What do you mean? Be specific. We're still looking for inclusion PD that will transform our inclusion practices. Teachers struggled to make the most of the inclusion process and were unsatisfied with our PD in this area. And then we have, for our ELL instructors, graduate courses and ELL instructor PLCs. Were they effective? Yes. How do we know? Student feedback and performance on classroom tests. What are the measurable outcomes? Survey results and performance in classes was plus 19%. And then the last section, family and community engagement, that was implemented or is currently being implemented this year. What's the strategy or program? Quarterly parent nights with different themes. Same thing for ELA and math. Was it effective? No. How do we know? Observation and surveys. What do you mean? We consistently have low turnout for all but the first parent night. Received only a handful of surveys. We're looking for strategies to improve our community relationship. So, program, who was it targeted at? Was it effective? How do we know it wasn't effective or was effective? And then be more specific. And then the same thing for these different areas as far as they're relevant, as far as there was anything specifically done for these content groups. So if there was nothing done for homeless or migrant groups, there's nothing added here. And that's the prior year interventions tab. Thanks, and we'll see you next tutorial video.